This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are discussing tax evasion. It's tax season. It makes perfect sense what timing we have for this show. It's great. Plus, it's Valentine's Day as we record this, so happy Valentine's Day to you all a month ago. It's probably like March Madness now, so happy basketball bracketing to you currently. And before I get off on too much of a ramble, let me introduce you to your co-host with the most. Joining me as always, it's Richie the Whiz Kid. How are you today, Rich?
Poor Aunt Hortense. We'll never hear from you again, nor have we ever heard from you before.
Wait, haven't we?
Oh, whoa. Look at Miles bringing the knowledge already. The knowledge. I'm doing great. It's time for a little Krusty tax season shit. So I'll go ahead and throw it back to you so we can get this party boat started that's going to be claimed by the IRS. The man, the myth, the I'm on a roller gay. It is Miles.
That's right. If you would like to download this podcast, please just fill out your I-69 forms. Make sure you've initialed on all the spaces, signed and dated, and you will have this in your downloads in like 6 to 8 weeks.
Miles, what were your gambling losses last year?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I do, however, want to talk about Bart the Fink, which is the episode that we are discussing today. An episode that I was very, very excited about. Going to just say it right up at the top of the show. This is one that I had strong memories of as a kid. I didn't enjoy it as much as I expected to on the rewatch, to be completely honest.
I feel like it wrapped up really, really quick. Like, I wasn't enjoying it up through like the first half, but I felt like the second half it lost a lot of luster. Like things just happened a little too quickly, where things were decided or facts were unearthed. Like in that part, I was just kind of like, huh, okay.
Well, there's definitely some cuts we'll talk about as we go through this episode, but yeah, kind of on your point, one of the things that I thought was really fun that got so quickly glossed over was when Bart was seeing Krusty in the wild, and like Krusty is, spoiler alert, dead, quote unquote, at this point, and he keeps seeing him appear, and I thought that was really cool. I would have loved to see some more examples of that, and maybe some stuff where Bart was like, he thought he was seeing it, but then it would turn out to just be like a plant or, whatever it might be. So it would kind of give you that like, is he, isn't he sort of thing. Because it went very quickly from, oh, Krusty's dead to, oh, no, he's not.
Oh, it's Handsome Pete.
Love Handsome Pete, and I'm in good company, but we'll talk about that too. Why don't we start at the beginning, as that seems to be the most logical place to do so. Bart the Fink originally aired on February 11th, 1996. It did run very, very long, actually, so there was no chalk gag on this one. The couch gag was a quickie, an oldie, a classic. The fax machine printout, it happens very quick, not taking up much time at all. And we open this episode, guess what, Rich? Not with television. Yeah.
Wow.
We were calling them out that they go to that, and they do use it a lot. But for this episode, there is no TV watching happening right off the top of the episode.
I'm going to assume inside the mansion there was a TV that they watched, though.
More than likely, yeah. We see the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and Wiseman. So the Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe is a classic joke, and just throwing the Wiseman on there, they just thought was really funny. But they're sitting with their very evil lawyer, or the executor, I should say, of their great aunt Hortense's will. And they are standing to inherit their entire estate if they stick to the only stipulation, which is, of course, they must spend one night in a haunted house.
Isn't that somewhat unusual?
No, it's a standard clause.
I just like that Homer was crying. Poor Aunt Hortense.
Yeah. All really fun stuff here. So we talked about it at the top. Great Aunt Hortense. We have actually seen a Aunt Hortense in the past. When Bart gets hit by a car and goes to heaven, he passes by some relatives and he actually says, "Hey, Aunt Hortense," on the way up before plummeting back down.
Oh, is it Hortense or Hortense?
Hortense, I don't know. Whatever it is, she's appeared twice now at this point, or at least been referenced twice.
And maybe one more time in the future. I mean, we've got 25 more seasons to get through currently being renewed for 32 seasons?
A few for sure. And I don't know if it's again, but yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It couldn't be the same person unless we're playing off of that weird chronological jump theory that the Simpsons don't occur in order. So maybe this is actually an episode that took place before Bart gets hit by a car so that he goes up and sees her on the way up then. Ooh, weird.
Or maybe he just in his mind is like, oh, she's really old, so naturally I would see her because she's probably going to die soon. And that's why he sees her and Bart gets hit by burns.
Or Hortense. Yeah, whatever it is. Maybe that was just more of a common name back then. But
maybe they were twin sisters and it was Hortense and Hortense.
Oh, that's not confusing at all. So this is a very silly gag that Josh Weinstein actually thought was just so dumb until they added the little tag on there where we get a very quick time lapse. The Simpsons stay in this spooky old rickety house, but they come out the next morning looking as fresh as ever. And Homer even flat out says, "Wow, that's the best night's sleep I ever had."
Their tap water tasted better than ours. I thought this house was very reminiscent of the Maison Derriere that we'll see in next season, I believe. I don't know why it just looked like the Bordello from Springfield to me.
Interesting. I'll have to pay attention to that when we get there. This great night of sleep comes accompanied with $100 each, except for Maggie, which I guess was Hortense's entire estate.
Well, they also left a lot of money to that one celebrity for some reason. Ann Landers.
Yeah, the rest goes to Ann Landers, as was stipulated in Hortense's will.
What?
But she didn't even have to stay in the haunted mansion. That's the worst.
I know.
Yeah, totally unfair. But the kids and the parents quickly find themselves with $100 burning a hole in their pocket, and Marge is excited to ask the kids what they're going to want to do with their money. And for some reason, Bart's response sounded really familiar to me. Do you recall, is there another episode that we've covered that Bart got 100 tacos, or is there someone at some point in our life that thought they should get 100 tacos, Rich? You have any idea what I'm talking about?
I still think at that day and age, maybe not being that drunk, but at that day and age, I might have been able to put down 100 tacos. I could not do it now, but no, Miles, I don't recall anything. Let's move along.
So I don't remember how old you were. I want to say it was
23?
23? Yeah, 22, 23, right in there. But yeah, I'm DD for this drunk ass, and on the way home he asked to stop at Taco Bell, so I obliged, no problem. But then, when I asked what he wants to order, he very, very sternly declares he wants 100 tacos, and he's very adamant about it. I opt to get him 10. That was the reasonable limit that I felt was allowed. I got him 10 tacos, and this jackass proceeds to open one and pass out, having said taco fall all over his drunk ass in the backseat, to be fair, of his own vehicle.
I think that was the only time I didn't finish my meal at Taco Bell. And they didn't. The other 9 tacos did not taste good the next day. Fridge tacos, not from Taco Bell.
I did put them in the fridge for you, hoping to try to save them. But no, Taco Bell really shouldn't be consumed, quote unquote, fresh. But it is what it is.
To be fair, I was very adamant that I could afford 100 tacos. At being a poor college student at the time, I think I had about $127 in my bank account, and I don't know why I had to prove that I could buy 100 tacos. But I just wanted them, Miles. I mean, who doesn't? Now I know where I got the idea from. We can blame the Simpsons, just like everyone else does.
Yep, they did it. It's your
But
fault, or it's their fault.
I could not stop laughing when I first watched this episode the other day because of that, because I had no idea it was coming.
Yeah, same here. I was just like, oh, that's so perfect. I love when life comes together in these sweet little moments like this. But Bart pulls a Richie, or Richie tried to pull a Bart. It's confusing because Richie's older, but technically Bart is. Either way, Bart says there's a special at the taco mat, 100 tacos for $100. I'm going to get that.
I'm going to contribute my money to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Tacos? Public broadcasting?
I love how she's so upset about Lisa giving money to public broadcasting.
She puts it on the same level as wasting your money on tacos. It is really funny.
It's not a waste.
Marge decides that she's not going to have her kids wasting her money. So instead, they are going to put their money in the bank. There's a great little visual gag here when they pull up to the bank. They actually have to drive by the taco mat, and we see none other than a comic book guy who comes out with a wheelbarrow full of tacos, and he just proudly states, "This should do for a Doctor Who marathon." Marge assures her children that they'll feel much better putting their money in the hands of professionals. So we walk up to a bank clerk in an ape mask.
Ook, ook. Are you folks ready to go ape?
Marge is explaining, a professional in an ape mask is still a professional.
It's true.
So this ape mask and our prices or rates are through the roofs or whatever it is, all of these silly little bank gimmicks that we see throughout this episode was actually an idea pitched by former showrunner David Merkin. Merkin was on a 1 week a deal contract with The Simpsons at this point, where he would come in for 1 day a week just to kind of offer some punch ups and look over the scripts and, offer his talents where he could. And this was one of the jokes that really helped this episode, just where it was lacking in a couple of places where the plot needed to be developed. He was able to find a really awesome way to get some really funny stuff, because it is hilarious to see a banker giving advice in a gorilla costume, just as it is to see a banker wearing a giant house because he's blowing through the roof.
I did notice as the episode was starting that it said, I think, consulting producer David Merkin, and I was like, oh! And it's just funny. We talk about this every week. It's funny how, like, stuff you never noticed as a kid, now you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to look for some slightly dark and off jokes here in this episode.
I don't think there was anything too dark, but
there
it was
wasn't.
Still a great contribution.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the commentary track for this episode. The DVD commentary featured Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, Jim Reardon, David Silverman, and David Cohen, who had nothing to do with this episode, but was there. And since this episode was written by John Swartzwelder, they figured they probably weren't going to get him, so he might as well commentate.
The joke that never gets old.
So something that was interesting on this one to me is I saw something in the credits that I don't recall seeing in the past, and that was that the story was by Bob Bushnell. The teleplay was by John Swartzwelder. Now, they did talk a little bit about that on the commentary, that the storyline was originally pitched by Bob Bushnell, and it was actually inspired by the celebrities like Willie Nelson at the time, who were having legitimate troubles and having things seized by the IRS. And they also had a story being told around the office that they had all been talking about the concept of a rumor that legendary comic Andy Kaufman there was a rumor that he had faked his own death at one point. So they kind of married those two ideas together, and then John Swartzwelder ended up writing the actual script. I just thought it was interesting, though, because I'd never actually see it labeled out like that, story by and teleplay by.
Yeah, look at all this stuff you're bringing today, Miles.
That's just the credits, man. That's just the credits. We've got a lot to go through. So let's get to it. The man at the bank tells Bart that he's going to find saving for his future far more thrilling than any roller coaster.
Really? Wow, I should have started a long time ago.
Now just sign these forms. I'm sure you'll find them more interesting than a weekend with Batman.
They really know how to pitch it, don't they?
So the kids are actually happier about this bank account situation than they seemed to be at first, because they were initially disappointed they couldn't spend the money the way they wanted to. But Lisa ended up getting a Thrifty Savers savings account, which a year from now, she's going to have an extra nickel compared to Bart's. Bart decided to skip that nickel in lieu of free customized checks, which he chose the Oh the Humanity design, which was the Hindenburg blowing up.
And I love how you had to, like a flip book, flip it backwards. So like the top check was where it was completely destroyed.
And started, as you went through, it actually got better and better. That is funny.
Yeah.
Bart is already being quite generous with his new checkbook. At school, he writes Milhouse a check for $1 million.
He did give Lisa a check for 1 cent, though, to be fair. So, like, he's getting both extremes, I think, here.
That's true. I do love Milhouse's response, however. $1 million? Gee, thanks, Bart. I owe you one.
That's a post-dated check. Remember, don't cash it till the year 10,000.
Okay. And then Milhouse starts watching his watch.
He's so excited.
I mean, it is $1 million.
I know.
Mean, it's totally worth it. And how far away is the year 10,000, really?
And that $1 million is probably going to be chump change in the year 10,000.
There's probably not going to be a planet in the year 10,000. But
you don't know where we'll be living at that point.
That's true. We'll be heads in jars on somebody's shelf, I'm sure.
They'll be passing down that check through generations till the year 10,000.
That's right. You know, checks aren't just good for paying off your friends and sister. You can also pay off your bullies when you don't have enough lunch money to make them happy. In this case, Jimbo is actually holding Bart upside down by the ankles, and Bart writes him a check for $1.
For services rendered. What were those services?
Jimbo does promise to let Bart go, though, as soon as the check clears. So he starts dragging him with his head, like, banking around. Also, on that check, we learn in this moment that Jimbo's real name is Corky.
That's a good trivia question.
That is a good trivia question. I'm not going to risk missing it later because I don't remember exactly where it happens in the script, but there's also a point in this episode, I think it's when Chalmers is at the door, that not only do we learn that Jimbo's first name is Corky in this episode, this is also the first episode that Mrs. Skinner is, or Miss Skinner, Skinner's mom is named Agnes.
Absolutely. We get 2 first-timers today.
Yeah, reoccurring characters that we've seen a lot of, that this is kind of going into that idea that Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein are just expanding those little details, making the world of The Simpsons more complete.
Which, that little instance was borderline, if not my favorite part in the episode. We'll get there, Miles. We'll get there.
Well, for now, where we are is backstage at Krusty Studios, where a lot of kids are desperately trying to get Krusty to give them an autograph, but Krusty's done for the day. He's calling it because they're going to name a burger after him at his new restaurant. But...
is that Krusty Burger where they're naming a new burger after him?
Yeah. Milhouse actually managed to get Krusty to sign his chest, and he even offers to push his belly up against Bart's before the ink dries. But Bart actually has a better idea. You see, every time he sends somebody a check, they have to sign it if they want their money. So he writes Krusty a check for $0.25, slips it in his back pocket, and basically, if Krusty ever wants that quarter, he's going to have to sign that check.
No fuss, no muss.
Milhouse is actually impressed, but not as impressed as he's going to make the girls when he shows them his Krusty tattoo on his stomach. Ew! I love Milhouse just laughs like a total dork in this moment. Like feels like he's making progress, which I guess he's being noticed. There's that.
There you go. He's confident and excited. A little too excited, but that's okay.
Oh, I actually jumped the gun because it's when a month later occurs when Bart gets these signatures back on these checks that we actually learn Jimbo's real name is Corky. But we also learn, and Bart learns in a very disappointed way, that you don't actually have to sign a check, or at least he gets a check back that has a stamp on it, and he's really frustrated because that was the check that Krusty was supposed to sign. Instead, there's just a Cayman Islands offshore holdings bank or whatever stamp on the back of this check.
Corporation.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Why would you stamp that on the back of the check?
Yeah, it is like the most suspicious thing possible. You're absolutely right. And Bart's furious about it. Again, he really wants Krusty's signature, so he takes it to the bank again. And this time, what's the guy at the bank wearing this time? It's something else silly.
I think that's when they have the house thing.
That's the guy he called. Either ways, it's back to the same bank. He tells
interest rates through the roof.
Yeah, that's it. And this time, Bart's told it's perfectly legal for a check to be stamped, but that's when the bank notices the super suspicious offshore Cayman Islands stamp and goes and gets it checked out. He makes a few phone calls. He calls another location in New York and Washington, D.C. He also calls the Cayman Islands Offshore Holding Corporation themselves, where we see a very tropical-looking man. I don't know. He's based on Sidney Greenstreet, and specifically the character he played in the movie Casablanca, is just kind of an overweight, sweaty guy with a hat and a tropical shirt.
I'm sorry, but I cannot divulge information about that customer's secret illegal account.
Click.
Oh, crap. I shouldn't have said he was a customer. Oh, crap. I shouldn't have said it was a secret. Oh, crap. I certainly shouldn't have said it was illegal. It's too hot today.
And then we see that all of this happened between 2 and 2:03 p.m., and then it takes all the way until 5 when the bank closes, however, for Bart to find out the bad news.
Krusty gets arrested within 5 minutes of Bart turning the check in.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, we skipped that part. It actually goes all the way through Krusty's arrest for tax fraud. And actually, another fun thing to point out, since we're talking about the clock, all of these places happens like 2 p.m., 2:01, 2:02, 2:03, etc. So that is led people at the time to believe that the Simpsons lived in the East Coast or somewhere with Eastern Standard Times, because Springfield had the same time as Washington, D.C., as along with New York and the Cayman Islands, which are all on EST.
Oh, okay. That's a little... I would have thought the exact same thing, but it wouldn't work out. Would it work out with the Cayman Islands, though? I don't know. Let's just move on.
You're right, though. After we see all of this, it's several hours later that Bart is still sitting around the bank, and they actually close down, and we see the clerk walk back by.
Sorry, the bank is... Oh, kid! Gosh, I'm sorry. I meant to tell you. Turns out Krusty is one of the biggest tax cheats in history, and they nailed him, all thanks to you. Some might say you're a hero, kid. Not me, however. I love Krusty.
Oh. And it really does hurt Bart to know that he may have just accidentally kind of screwed over somebody that he greatly, greatly admires. And that's the gut punch that we leave you with, as we're going to go ahead and take our first break. That's the end of the first act of Bart the Fink. We'll be right back for Act 2 after we hear from some buddies of ours.
I'm Jay.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Corey.
We are the Cretans Guild.
We're a trio of man-children whose friendship predates The Lion King, Green Day's Dookie, the N64, and the Chunnel.
We have backgrounds working in television, video games, radio broadcasting, creative writing, and pizza delivery. That's a large cheese, right?
On our podcast, Nerd or Not, you'll hear us talk about board games, TV, movies, comics, collectibles, video games, wrestling, theme parks. We even did a segment on f***ing pizza.
So check and listen to us on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And check out our socials on Twitter and Instagram under Cretans Guild.
Welcome to the Guild.
We come back for our second act, and Kent Brockman puts it on blast. Not only that Krusty has been arrested for tax avoision, but also that...
Yes, it's evasion.
Also that Bart Simpson is the one that got him caught, essentially. And Bart is immediately heartbroken. I mean, he's still hurting from this last act.
Did you happen to see what it said about the photo that was submitted of Bart and Krusty?
No, what did it say?
It said property or sent in by Homer Simpson. So Homer sent a picture of Bart to the news team to put on the TV, and it was literally a picture of Krusty and Bart smiling together.
Ooh,
Like,
that's rough.
no context whatsoever.
And Bart's just, again, heartbroken. Krusty's my hero. How could I do this to him?
It's a tragedy for all us kids. But Bart, you can't beat yourself up.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of people to do that for me at recess tomorrow. He's not wrong. Let's be real. We then cut to the IRS plaza where we see Krusty is pleading, trying to do anything he can to stay out of jail.
I can't go to jail. I got a swanky lifestyle. I'm used to the best.
Krusty, this is America. We don't send our celebrities to jail. We're just gonna garnish your salary.
You're going to garnish my celery?
Please, Krusty, no jokes.
Who's joking? I don't understand what you're saying. It all sounds so crazy to me.
It simply means we'll be taking a small portion of your salary until your debt is repaid. Say 75% for 40 years.
But I don't plan to live that long.
Oh, well, better make it 95%.
Ah! Oh.
So the IRS is immediately taking action because right off the bat, we see that the Krusty Burger is now being rebranded the IRS Burger, and Homer is stopping in for lunch. And I'm just going to go ahead and say I think this sequence is my favorite joke in the episode. I love Homer doing like calculations. I love everything about it. It's like half moon glasses. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
But Homer is trying to figure out his order. Let's see. I'll have 4 tax burgers, 1 IRS witch, withhold the lettuce, 4 dependent-sized sodas, and a Ficacino.
Fill out the Schedule B. You should receive your burgers in 6 to 8 weeks.
We see Homer concentrating so hard. Marge, what were your gambling losses last year?
$700. She just knows.
Actually, it's surprising it wasn't more.
Yeah. That means she won for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it couldn't have been too bad, right? But Krusty is basically at rock bottom at this point. We see him getting off a bus, which I'm going to talk more about in a second. But for now, he's just completely miserable. He's walking towards his mansion, passing by various statues of himself, things of that nature.
They took my money. They wrecked my show. They buried a bunch of stinking veterans in my family plot. But at least I've got my memories. Those are locked up safe in my fabulous mansion.
And as soon as he says this, we see that his mansion is currently being foreclosed on. And for very, very cheap, I might add, his stuff is actually being auctioned away, which is real fun. But real quick, that bus that Krusty steps off of actually has an advert on the side of it that says, "Are you missing Mad About You?" And that is extra funny due to the fact that Mad About You was the program that played opposite of The Simpsons on CBS at the time. So
NBC?
or NBC at the time, excuse me. So in a roundabout way, The Simpsons were encouraging their viewers to turn the channel, but Josh Weinstein was adamant about the fact that he just did not understand why anybody would ever watch Mad About You over The Simpsons. Like, it just did not compute how that's even possible. So this little rib was a joke at their expense.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds more like a slap in the face than it does a, hey, change the channel.
And I guess it could be taken either way. However, Paul Reiser, who starred on Mad About You, actually saw it and thought it was really funny. To the point where he had an answer back by placing a Bart Simpson doll on the set of Mad About You as a little clapback, I guess you might say.
The clap.
There was one other little bit about that story, and that was a note from the censors that The Simpsons received, because they got a note saying, "It's not Fox's policy to promote shows on other networks." They wondered if there was, if they even realized that not only was it on another network, but it was during their time slot.
It's funny to me that they actually slowed it down enough to see what it actually said. Where I guess they get copies of the script, too.
It wasn't actually in the script, I don't think.
Not in our script, but I don't know. How did they find out?
By watching the show. Everybody watches The Simpsons.
Even Fox.
That's right. We see that Krusty's stuff is being auctioned away for super, super cheap. I mean, I think Patty and Selma buy a handmade leather suitcase that has his family crest and initials embroidered in it, and they pay like $1 or a dime or something crazy.
A nickel or something. My grandpa Zev would turn over in his grave if it wasn't filled with some veteran.
I love that that very quick callback. He just talked about how even his family plots are being given to the military. And then we see the gem of the collection, Krusty's
pornography?
Stacks of pornography.
Oh. I did that as a bit. I thought you were going ahead with something else.
So, what's great about his pornography, first of all, Krusty almost has a meltdown about it.
Oh, my beloved pornography. I can't watch this anymore. I'm going to bed.
We actually see that, he couldn't because Krusty's bed is being auctioned away, but my favorite part is Jasper is actually really upset because he bid a dime for Krusty's pornography and then almost immediately gets outbid for 20 cents by a caller from Japan. And Jasper's line, though, is great. Oh, only bought a dime. Didn't know there'd be pornography. So, literally everything Krusty owns is being sold. Mo takes a nap on Krusty's bed after buying it for $1. And
good night, everybody.
Good night, Mo. And even Krusty's private plane, the I'm on a Rolla Gay, which is the second reference to the B-29 Enola Gay airplane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima in this season. If you recall back to Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming, there was also a joke referencing that plane then as well.
But I love that plane. I used to fly to Vegas in it with Dean Martin. One time we were flying in it, and the moon hit his eye like a big pizza pie. We wrote a song about it, but it ended up infringing on one he recorded years before.
That's another really great joke. I love, we actually see Patty and Selma sitting there, and Patty's like, hey, Selma, that plane would go great with your suitcase. But Selma's like, nah, I just bought it to soak my feet in.
Ooh, that was creepily on point, Miles. I picture you with hairy legs all of a sudden. Oh, wait.
I just think it's funny that she has this, like, obviously, like, what would you call, like, antique luggage that she's using as a foot spa. It's great, but...
I mean, she's using it for the price she paid for it.
True. When the auction is complete, Krusty is completely dejected, sitting on the curbside of the mansion he formerly owned, and none other than Bart comes strolling along. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused you, Krusty, but you know, my mom says God never closes a door without opening a window.
No offense, kid, but your mom's a dingbat! There's no silver lining here. I was a big cheese, a huge cheese, and now look at me. I gotta ride the bus like a schmuck. I gotta live in an apartment like an idiot. I gotta wait in line with a bunch of nobodies to buy groceries from a failure.
It doesn't matter what you did wrong. As long as you're on TV, people will respect you.
Bah! What good is respect without the moolah to back it up? Everywhere I go, I see teachers driving Ferraris, research scientists drinking champagne. I tried to drink a Coke on the bus, and they took away my pass. That's no life for a famous clown.
Bart tries to help out by saying, hey, you can punch me in the face if you'd like to, but Krusty politely declines and just sends him on his way instead.
But he's about to do it, too. That's the part that's so screwed up. He rears back and looks super angry, and then he's just like, go home, kid.
Yeah, and I guess Bart does, and we cut to the Quickie Mart where we hear an unusual noise coming from the background, and I guess we've cut in time because suddenly we see Krusty bawling like a baby and flying his plane. He's waving goodbye to the world, seemingly on his way out of this dark, harsh life.
And then we have a very funny scene.
We see that Super Nintendo Chalmers must have gone on a date with Agnes Skinner, Seymour's mother. He's dropping her off at the door after the date. I must say, I've had a lovely evening, Agnes. I don't suppose I could come in for a cup of... Click. And Skinner actually opens the door and turns on the light. Seymour!
Mother! Superintendent Chalmers!
Skinner!
What I wouldn't give for something to interrupt this awkward moment.
And then we see Krusty flying by and crying. I love the animation here. Krusty's like flying down the street like 10 feet above the ground, if that.
That'll do nicely.
Sometimes the world gives you what you need, and when you ask for it, what can you say?
Skinner's so happy in that moment, like it's so perfect.
So the word's kind of spreading as this plane's flying through the streets of Springfield, and everybody's coming out to watch on, including the Simpsons. You gotta hand it to Krusty.
Yeah, even with all of his problems, he's still willing to do something unbelievably dangerous just to entertain his fans. Wow.
Yeah, that's my Krusty. I got a feeling he'll be all right. Fire, burning, explosion sounds.
It's the camera angle, too, because it's like shot from behind Bart looking at the camera, and then as Krusty's about to hit the mountain, it pans to the left where the mountain's at, and you see him wreck immediately.
The director, David Silverman, on the commentary talked a little bit about this scene, which was a very impressive scene from start to finish. The whole flight sequence was really good. But when they do these types of shots, especially explosions, they usually will actually shoot them backwards, this one included. So you actually start with the explosion, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of piece together where everybody should be in their reactions as you take it backwards frame by frame.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. But it helps them with getting the correct reactions and timing from the character models and everything of that nature.
Crazy.
The commentary also pointed out that right there could have easily been the end of the act, and a lot of people actually thought it should have been, but they wanted to make sure it was explicitly clear that they were declaring Krusty dead. So we actually get another scene where the town rushes up to the site of the wreck to get a look for themselves, and Police Chief Wiggum is on the scene. Ladies and gentlemen, Krusty the Clown is dead.
That's after he makes everybody crowd around the scene of the crash, though. Hey, everybody, get a load of this flaming wreckage. Come on, crowd around. Don't be shy.
Here's Krusty's shoes. Yeah,
he invites
like the children too. Yeah, it's like little kids and everybody. It's funny, but that's the second time this episode that we end the act on a dark moment. This one even darker than before, and we are going to go ahead and take another quick break to mourn the loss of Krusty the Clown. We'll be right back for Act 3 of Bart the Fink.
In the arms of the angels.
Hi, I'm Mr. Most Days Off. You might remember me from such podcasts as the 50th Podcast Celebration Show and the Michael Price interview. I brought a friend along today to talk to you about an exciting new product.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Richie the Whiz Kid.
Miles, did you know that most people don't know where to get cool pop culture shirts?
I had no idea.
If you go to popthreads.com, you'll find a great selection of t-shirts, and if you use the discount code Simpsons, you can save 15% on your order. And that's good news for everybody.
That is good news for everybody.
And did you know the shirts are also inflammable?
Richie, that means they catch on fire.
I had no idea.
Help support the Best Darn Diddly Review Show by using our discount code Simpsons at popthreads.com. And do try to stay away from open flames.
Bye, everybody.
You know, Rich, normal people like you and I, we die and we just have a standard, normal funeral affair. Nothing too big or just, some friends mourning the loss of somebody they cared about. But if you're a celebrity and you die, you get a celebrity funeral hosted by none other than Troy McClure.
I just hope whenever I die, or you die, that Troy McClure will be there to give the eulogy, or when we inevitably both die together.
Yeah. I think our best shot of that is just to clip together a bunch of Simpsons clips of Troy McClure talking. So it'd be like, "Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You might remember me from Miles' funeral and the Whiz Kid funeral."
Hi, I'm Mr. Black.
This got dark. I don't know. We see it is at a funeral. I guess it's
It is tax season.
Yeah, it's true. It's a dark time in our lives. But we see that they're on their way to the funeral, and Bart is like just having a hard time coming to grips with it. I can't believe Krusty's really gone.
Don't worry, son. I'm sure he's in heaven right now, laughing it up with the other celebrities. John Dillinger, Ty Cobb, Joseph Stalin. I wish I were dead.
I love that Stalin
not the
made
best
that
pick
list.
of people. Maybe Ty Cobb's okay, but Stalin and Dillinger, woo.
Yeah, that's interesting. People that are still of this world are attending this funeral, hosted, like I said, by Troy McClure. But something to point out, there's actually an animation of writer John Swartzwelder sitting in the very front row, for some reason, with a puppet.
It's Kermit the Frog.
Kermit the Frog on his right arm sitting next to him.
I was wondering who the actual person with the arm up his butt was, but yeah, that's Kermit the Frog.
And that's John Swartzwelder.
Oh.
Allegedly.
We've seen him.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah.
We are gathered here today to mourn the passing of Herschel Schmackel Krustofsky, beloved entertainer and dear friend. Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from other show business funerals such as Andre the Giant, We Hardly Knew Ye, and Shemp Howard, Today We Mourn a Stooge.
I like how they have to throw in that part so that you know who it is.
Yeah, true.
Dude, I could not get over the freaking big wreath. Or no, it wasn't the wreath, it was the tombstone. It felt so morbid to me because it says, "See you real soon, kids," on his tombstone. And I was just like, what the hell? You're dead.
They also noted on the commentary, not my joke, but made me laugh a lot, that the other tombstones looked really small. And I think it was Josh Weinstein said, well, maybe it was children's graves.
Oh.
Merkin moment from the commentary.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in attendance for this funeral, including some of the former sideshows that we've seen. Mel is there to present, but we also see Sideshow Raheem, that appropriately enough, since today, as we're recording this, it's Valentine's Day, he appeared in the episode I Love Lisa. And I choose you,
callback.
Richie.
Well, you have no choice, Miles.
We also see Luke Perry is there, who is very briefly a sideshow act for Krusty during the episode Krusty Gets Canceled.
Sideshow Bob isn't there, for the record, according to Mel.
True, every sideshow is in attendance except for Sideshow Bob for some reason. We see Sideshow Mel is there as well, and he unveils a memorial to Krusty, and Troy McClure introduces Bob Newhart to give a nice little speech. And it's traditional Bob Newhart. He kind of mutters and talks really slow, but it's enough.
He's actually there for another funeral.
That's right. He just happened to be walking by.
I'm waiting for another funeral. And Troy McClure's like, "Don't worry, I got you covered." And he goes, "Bob Newhart, everyone." Makes him talk.
And actually, his speech gets to the point where it makes Homer shed a tear.
But it's about nothing.
Yeah,
it's
like,
very Bob Newhart.
Just like very plain, not really. I mean, he didn't even know Krusty.
Yeah.
But Troy comes in. Well, that's the funeral, folks. We'll be sitting Shiva at the Friars Club at 7 and again at 10. You must be 18 for the 10. It gets a little blue.
Oh.
We also see the news reports. Kent Brockman talks about how they are unveiling a new Krusty the Clown stamp where people are asked to vote on 2 different designs. One of Krusty's heartwarming smile or of his fiery death. This is actually, they did pick the first one for what it's worth, but this is actually based on a real-life stamp that was commemorating Elvis Presley, where people were asked to vote between an image of a young, thin Elvis or an older, fatter Elvis.
I wonder which one they picked, Miles.
Mm-hmm.
The fat one, I'm sure. Well, I was hoping that when you said that it was based on something real, it was going to be something with more drastic differences than that, but I'll take the Elvis joke.
And hey, if that's bumming you out, man, or if Krusty's bumming you out, don't let Krusty's death get you down. People die all the time, just like that.
Thanos!
Why, you could wake up dead tomorrow. Well, good night. This is older Bart.
The look on Bart's face when he says that, too. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah. So this is where we kind of start going really quickly, as Richie alluded to at the top of the show. We're going to have a lot of stuff happen in the very short minutes we have left in this episode. And it does feel somewhat rushed, especially this next part where we see Bart is seeing Krusty. He sees him in a pickup truck driving by with some scrap metal, but his mom assures him that it's just his mind playing tricks on him. Sweetheart, sometimes when people die, you just want them to be alive so badly you see them everywhere. I went through the same thing when Lyndon Johnson died.
What? We learn some weird things about Marge sometimes.
We really do. She's got a history. She's not just as boring and plain as you might expect. Bart's later at the hospital and he sees Krusty again. He even asks Dr. Hibbert, who was that man?
Why, Bart, telling you that would violate the patient-doctor privilege. Just if I were to tell you that Jasper here has 5 seconds to live.
What he say?
He said I'm next.
For some reason, Bart just needs to think, and where else do you think than on the beach looking into the ocean?
Sounds appropriate. He's done that numerous times before.
They actually joke on the commentary, they end up at the ocean in the third act more than you would think for The Simpsons, but this one's not an exception. And looking down into the water, Bart again sees who must be Krusty, but it's somebody who's checking a lobster trap, so it doesn't really seem to fit, but Bart is convinced that this has to be Krusty.
Bart, you're seeing Krusty everywhere because you want to tell him you're sorry for causing his death. Would it help you if I told you you're not responsible for Krusty's death?
Yes, it would.
Well, I can't. You just have to learn to live with your mental problem. Lisa with the zang.
Well, Bart plays detective again here for a little bit, and actually that's something I wanted to point out too. Just I noticed in this sequence here especially, it almost starts to feel like a Sideshow Bob episode, except there's no Sideshow Bob, which is usually the highlights of those murder mysteries. So it just gets a little bit bland.
It's nobody believing Bart about Sideshow Bob, but, about Krusty this time. Yeah, I see that. I totally get that.
And also the partnering of Lisa and Bart to solve a mystery. It seems like the Sideshow Bob episodes usually brings those two together a lot, though.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, either way, they decide that between carrying nets in the truck, getting the motion sickness pills, which I guess he was able to see at the hospital, and that he saw him in, he wasn't actually in scuba diving equipment, he was just free diving down to lobster traps. But all of that could only lead to one place, and they go to see the Sea Captain McAllister at the docks.
Arr, I've got some customers. Call me back, Ishmael.
Which, that Call Me Back Ishmael is a great joke. That's actually alluding to the first line of Moby Dick, which is Call Me Ishmael.
A very smart joke, and I love tying it into the Sea Captain, because that's the only character you can tie it into. But yeah, it's one of those things where as a kid, you just don't think anything of it, and you just maybe give it a perplexed look, but then after doing some research or after learning things in school, you feel smarter watching The Simpsons.
Beautiful. They accidentally teach you something.
Don't!
Well, kind of. Slightly wrong line if you think about it. But either way, Bart has a way of asking if they've seen Krusty. He blows up a balloon with Krusty's face on it and is like, have you seen this man?
Arr, I know that man. That be Handsome Pete, who dances for nickels.
And a tiny little man with a face that looks very similar to Krusty's by the name of Dancing Pete comes out and starts doing a little jig holding out a cup for donations. No, we're looking for this man, Krusty the Clown.
Nar, nar, nar.
But just then as Lisa's almost ready to give up, saying that there's no use, they've looked up and down all of the docks from Pier 1 to that Pier 1 by Pier 17. But just then, Bart spots something that gives him a clue, and it's a bounced check from the man with the exact same signature as Krusty, which includes little stars around it. Except this time it's signed Rory B. Bellows from Slip 8.
Ooh, a clue, a raging clue.
And as Bart and Lisa head off to check Pier 8, Bart actually flips a quarter to Handsome Pete.
Arr, not a quarter. He'll be dancing for hours.
And this is actually one of Matt Groening's absolutely favorite lines in the entire series. In fact, he says that there isn't a week that goes by that he doesn't laugh about this at least once or twice.
Wow.
Yeah,
Strong
he literally said it's like one of his favorite gags ever. And he even said at like the very beginning of the commentary, he like declared like this has one of his favorite jokes in it. And they're like, well, what is it? And he's like, I'll tell you when we get there.
I wonder if eventually the bank had to give Bart the quarter that he tried to get from... no, I'm sorry, I'm in reverse. Maybe this is the quarter Bart intended for Krusty. I don't know. Discuss.
Oh, since he didn't actually have to pay it out, yeah, he was able to withdraw it. That's an interesting theory.
A theory that leads nowhere, brought to you by two guys going nowhere. Woo!
No, too true. So Lisa and Bart approach Slip 8, and they see a man on a boat, and they ask, hey, are you Rory B. Bellows?
Yes.
How about Krusty the Clown?
Sorry, I don't do impressions.
Well, if you're not Krusty, how come you have the exact same signature as him?
I'm Rory Bellows, I tell you, and I got some real corroborating evidence over here by the throttle!
But his ship is still tied to the dock, so he's not going anywhere.
You know, you kids could have said something instead of letting me make an ass of myself.
We see a lot of things that lead us to believe that Rory is in fact Krusty the Clown. Obviously, their face is the same. Also, they have the same pacemaker scar on their chest and Krusty's signature third nipple.
Superfluous nipple. But it's not the same face, Miles. He doesn't have a red nose. He doesn't have a beard like Krusty's. His hair's completely
Similar
different.
facial structures. I'm sorry, you're right. But Rory goes on to explain that, even if he was Krusty, he doesn't want to be Krusty anymore, and that's why he faked his death. You see, Krusty actually bailed out just before the plane crashed, and he jumped into a carefully placed net. Whack! I love, you can see the shadow tracking this net, but at the last second, it swerves and goes right into a big boulder, and then he lands in the net.
Funny.
Oh my god, it's brutal. It's a face-first fall from the plane, so it would have absolutely killed him for what it's worth.
He had a Homer-like recovery.
Yeah, that's true. Which is also, those two at one time were the same characters. So that's also interesting.
It plays.
Bart points out that, now that we've blown your cover, I guess you gotta come back and do your show again.
Or kill us. I won't be coming back, kids. I got a sweet life here. The sea air is cleaning my lungs. The sun has toasted my pale skin a healthy brown. And most important, I learned that I don't need money to be happy. All that high living just distracted me from my true calling in life. Salvaging sunken barges for scrap iron. Sorry, kids. There's nothing left for me on dry land anymore.
But Krusty, what about all the kids who depend on you to brighten up their afternoon? Are you going to turn your back on them?
Yes.
And Krusty starts to sail off. But Lisa and Bart aren't giving up just yet. They just casually start strolling down the dock as Krusty rolls beside them or drives the boat beside them. And they're just basically trying to goad
Sideshow
Krusty.
Bob him?
Yeah, exactly. They're using a little reverse psychology, trying to get him to realize the error of his ways.
What about the great feeling you get from knowing you're better than regular people?
What about being an illiterate clown who's still more respected than all the educators in the country put together?
Yeah, I'm not gonna let those guys hog all the respect while I'm out here in this stinking tub.
We see Krusty throws the anchor down and he actually dives into the water and starts swimming back to shore. I love as he's swimming through the blue water, you see a yellow streak forming behind him.
That's just what those eggheads want. Well, forget it, Poindexter, 'cause Krusty's back in town.
Yay!
I love that we learned that his skin is actually white and his nose is actually red here.
Well, actually, if you recall, I don't remember what episode it is, but they even mentioned in the commentary, at one point we see Krusty in the hospital, like, about to go into surgery. I think it was, like, when Bart had surgery or Homer had
That's
surgery.
when he's running from the mob. And
that might be it, but he says, hey, this ain't makeup, kid.
Yeah, that's true.
And he turns out he wasn't lying. He shakes out his wet hair, he gets his signature hairstyle back, he pulls off his fake beard and fake nose, which makes his real nose red, by the way. And they walk off together into the sunset. But Bart has one more question to ask. Krusty, what are you going to do about the tax problems?
Don't sweat it. The life of Rory B. Bellows is insured for a surprisingly large amount.
And off in the distance, we see the boat explode into a fiery explosion. And we hear Bart, Lisa, and Krusty together laughing as it fades into the credits to bring us to the end of Act 3 and to the end of the episode, Bart the Fink. Richie, was there anything else that you or that book wanted to talk about?
I just, we got everything in the guidebook here except for there was a message on a wreath at Krusty's funeral that the guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Your Favorite Family, wanted to point out. And it just said, Krusty, you can never be replaced. And it was, it said like laughs 369-3084. I don't know what that means. I don't know why they wanted to point it out. This guidebook points some weird things out that make no sense sometimes. I thought there was a joke in there possibly, but I couldn't find anything. I don't know. It kind of is a metaphor for the second half of the episode, as we've talked about a few times already. I love everything up until after Krusty dies. Like, once he hits that rock and falls on the net, things just get a little bit strange in this one. There's still a lot of fun jokes. There's still a lot of hilarity that ensues. But yeah, it just feels a little weird how easily it wraps up.
Well, get ready for a fucking mind blower, because there's some weird shit from the commentary on this one. I already talked a lot about how this episode was cut drastically for time, so there was a lot of things that hit the cutting room floor, including an entire set piece in the first act featuring a game of donkey basketball between the Springfield Elementary School teachers and the local Springfield celebrities. Just in case you don't know what that is, like myself, apparently this is a common thing at one time as kind of a gimmick where people actually play basketball while riding on the backs of donkeys.
They do that in a future episode where it's the kids versus the teachers, where Bart doesn't have hearing and he accidentally moons the American flag during the national anthem.
Well, there you go, because that episode, or that whole scene was originally written for this episode, and they had to completely remove it from the first act just because they were a full 7 minutes over on time at the time, or when they first got their cut back on this. So it was a huge amount that they had to cut. Now, another possible reason that this episode ran long is because they have a large number of notably slow talkers in this episode. Both Troy McClure and Selma are actually two of the slowest talking characters in the Simpsons universe, and they both have a decent number of lines in this episode. Krusty the Clown is the third slowest talker in the Simpsons universe, and he obviously talks a lot in this episode, but none of that compares to the slow talkiness of the guest Bob Newhart, whose scene, one line, originally was more than 2.5 minutes long, and more than half of his recorded performance had to be cut for time. Another thing that's interesting about that, however, is everybody at The Simpsons was a huge fan of Bob Newhart. So much so that the writer's room shut down for a day so they could all go and watch Bob Newhart record. By the nature of Bob Newhart's performance and the line he delivers in this episode, Bob Newhart had to speak very quietly and very slowly, so you had a room full of people who had to be absolutely silenced for about 2.5 minutes at a time, which is how long his line took. So you had about a room full of people who were just excited as hell to see this person perform live, recording a 2.5 minute line in complete silence, and as soon as he would end every single time, the room would erupt in laughter and cheers. Just a really great guest experience with a classic comedian who is able to make a guest spot on our favorite show.
Aw, they always are so happy to meet people. I like that.
I love that they just write in stuff for people that they like to meet. I think that's brilliant, actually.
It's working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't agree more. And that is going to bring us to the end of this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Once again, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this journey through The Simpsons, the Golden Age, and beyond. Make sure you follow us on all social media at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. You can follow The Wiz Kid, Richie at TheWiz_Kid23, and I'm at Mr. Most Days Off pretty much everywhere. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell people about the show, all of that nonsense that we're supposed to say as responsible podcasters. But more importantly, make sure you come back next week when Richie and I will be reviewing Lisa the Iconoclast.
Oh, you want me to say something? What I wouldn't give for something to interrupt this awkward moment.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
That'll do nicely.